Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first event in a series of 3 on the topic like industry and policy jointly optimizing European and national research, development and innovation. This is an ambitious title, and it's an ambitious title for an ambitious series of an ambitious organization. The organization that invites you is the National Stakeholder Coordination Group. I'm not going to explain what that is. I'm your moderator only. We have a person who knows it. That's Michele De Nigris. Michele De Nigris will introduce you after I will have shown the overall agenda, which you have seen most probably. We have Michele explaining the role of the NSCG and why do we invite and whom do we invite and what do we want to achieve. Then we have a keynote from our valued George Paunescu from the European Commission. He will explain what the Commission decides, wants us to follow on international, national levels. Then we have 2 introductory speeches, one from Ilaria Losa from Italy and one from Professor Thomas Hammacher from München. They both will introduce us into the topic that we have on stake today, its flexibilities. We can discuss a lot in energy transition and climate neutrality, but we want to concentrate a bit on what is flexibility and to what end do we need the flexibility, what flexibility, where, and to be provided by whom. That's the overall topic today. And we will discuss it then in a 1-hour panel discussion with people from international level, EU level organizations, national level organizations, from industry, and also Lady Mayor, who is very much interested in driving her little municipality in the Bavarian Alps into an energy community, but she will explain. So that's the agenda. Let's run, don't lose time. We get a short introduction by Michele. You will share some slides, please.
Thank you very much, Ludwig, and welcome everybody to this first meeting of a series of events of the National Stakeholders Coordination Group. My name is Michele De Nigris, and I am acting as the coordinator of the National Stakeholders Coordination Group during this series of events. Let me share my screen if I don't make any big mistake. Just a moment, here it should be. I hope you can see my screen. I hope, well, good. So first of all, what is just few words about what is a National Stakeholders Coordination Group. The National Stakeholders Coordination Group is a sounding board, is an exchange platform for national research, development and innovation stakeholders in the area of the integrated energy systems and networks. It wants to support the implementation of the set plan implementation working group 4 and more in general of the set plan action 4 on integrated and flexible energy systems. The aim of the National Stakeholders Coordination Group is to exchange information about activities in the different member states. We want to transfer information and knowledge between the stakeholders on national and regional level and the expert working groups, more specifically of the European Technology and Innovation Platform, the ETIP SNET on smart networks for an energy transition. And we want to reflect, we want to comment, we want to discuss national stakeholders' perspectives, the outcome of the expert groups of the ETIP SNET, and we also want to provide a platform also to exchange knowledge between the implementation working groups of the set plan and the stakeholders at national level. So the scope being the exchange of information and somehow the, I won't say coordination about the different initiatives ongoing at European and why not also at international level in the ETIP, in the implementation working groups, in the Clean Energy Transition Partnership and so on. We think that there is a huge interest in trying to discuss some outstanding issues in the development of the integrated energy system. Among the different subjects which can be of great interest for the community, we found also together with Ludwig that the aspect of flexibility would be an important subject because it involves so very many different stakeholders, because it is the key also for the correct and for the stable and for the safe integration of renewables in view of the progressive and then full decarbonization of the integrated energy system. So this is why we have selected this subject to exchange as one of the present outstanding aspect for the National Stakeholders Coordination Group. Flexibility. Few words, really very, very few words about what we are discussing about, and you will hear much more detailed and technically sound contribution from the next speakers. But just very, very few words. Remember the power system of few years ago, big power plants, energy to the electrical load, passive electrical load, a production fully controllable that could be somehow adapted to the variability of the load. Nowadays, many renewables are replacing traditional power plants. We have an increasing number of energy storage systems and somehow shiftable loads. But if we look a little bit further down the row and further in time, we see the energy system of tomorrow, like I think very well represented by this scheme coming out of the Vision 2050 of the technology platform on smart networks. You see it here very briefly and very represented in a picture, and you see maximization of renewable energy production. You see integration among different energy vectors, among different grids, among different sources, gas, fuel, hydrogen, through storage and through the so-called integration of power to X. The central role of the electricity grid, this is why we are speaking today about also flexibility, given the fact that the electricity is and is going to remain the main vector for renewable energy. And of course, because of the sensitivity of the electricity system, we need flexibility services all along the value chain with, of course, the use of so very many digital technologies that are enabling all these services that we are speaking about today. Of course, consumers, energy communities are gaining importance, are having always more importance, and they are going to be as well the actors of the flexibility, among the actors of the flexibility systems we are going to discuss today. So the effect of renewables penetration is somehow also seen in this picture. We have renewable plants that can also be located very far away from the consumption areas, for example, like what happens in Italy. So there is a risk of having frequent congestions of the high voltage network. We have renewable generation, which is variable and not totally predictable. So we have unbalances of generation and between generation and load. So we need flexibility, and we have the decrease of fossil-fired generation and the taking out of service of fossil-fire generation. So with less so-called traditional flexibility given by inertia. And this is another reason why new types of flexibility resources are needed. Many different solutions can be seen. Generation flexibility from the generation side, from the transmission and distribution side, the use of storage in all its different forms. Demand side management is also one important aspect of the delivery of flexibility services. But of course, we have then sector coupling, coupling electricity with heat, with gas, with the smart charging of electric vehicles. But now coming to our real goal here today, and our real goal during this initiative. We are among the different researchers and the technicians, the network operators, quite used to discuss about flexibility. What we normally do is we discuss about flexibility from a very functional and technological perspectives. So how much do we need in terms of storage? MVA or in terms of energy stored, in terms of NVH, and so on. So we speak about energy flows, about timings, about stability, and so on. But there are different aspects that need to be taken into consideration when we speak about flexibility. Yes, the functionality, the functional aspects, and the technological aspects are extremely important, but at the end, you will not have the required level of flexibility if you don't consider the society, if you don't consider the policy, you don't make the policy adapted to the delivery and to the expansion of flexibility services, if you don't have an adequate regulation, and of course, if you don't organize the markets in the correct way. So looking at these different aspects together, and the one of the roles, looking at the roles of the National Stakeholders Coordination Group that in fact looks at the different actions in terms of top-down or bottom-up approach, private against public or private with public, global, European, or local and regional perspectives, looking at the fact that the National Stakeholders Coordination Group wants to work together with the different initiatives, from the ETIPs to the implementation working groups to the partnerships, and also to the initiatives at global level. So to organize essentially this discussion platform, we have tried to see how we could really and interestingly discuss about the aspect of flexibility. So we have organized a series of 3 events. The first one is happening today, where we are going to look at the regional and local flexibility needs. So looking at the need part, we will discuss about the different types, about the different definitions, about the different volumes of flexibility that are needed in the different framework, from the global aspects to the very local flexibility aspect. In less than 1 month time, we will have another webinar dedicated to the role of energy communities to the local and regional flexibility, the contribution of these energy communities in the local perspectives, again, to foster the cooperative provision of flexibility services. And in the mid-June, we are going to have then a hybrid meeting, mostly, and we hope very much in-person meeting in Rome, where we will discuss a twofold aspect. So what are the technologies that allow the flexibility to be really delivered in the system, and what are the markets, what are the regulation, what are the policies that will enable the implementation of these technologies and of these solutions for flexibility. So why, if we already have some of the technologies, we do not yet fully apply the technologies and the solutions for providing the real flexibility services in the real world. So this is what we want to discuss today. I think that together with Ludwig, we are going, and we hope to have a very interactive workshop. And I will, of course, follow the workshop very, very actively, and hope to be with you and to drive the conclusions at the end. Thank you very much, Ludwig.
Thank you, Michele, for the introduction. Just to let people know, we are recording this session because, as Michele said, there will be follow-up events, and we want to share the recordings of the first and the second ones with the other participants that register. Unfortunately, many people register like today, and then they don't show up, but they expect that we will present it online or something, so we will not disappoint them. So, Michele, you have said it. In economy, we would say the USP of this series is that we talk on all political levels, and we also talk about policy and with policy, down or up to the municipalities, whatever you feel. But that does not mean that we neglect there is a European level, and the European Commission has an idea, and they're setting frameworks and they're driving processes. And we are happy to have a representative. We have George Barnesco, who in a way is responsible in the Commission for the NSCG and the ETIP SNET, but I think this is not why you are here today. You want to give us some information about the backgrounds and the frameworks of what we are discussing. Your turn. You can share your slides, George. That's easier.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Ludwig. Thank you, Michele. Thanks, ETIP SNET and the National Stakeholder Coordination Group for inviting me today. I hope my slides are visible now on the screen.
Not yet.
Not yet. They should be.
Now they are.
Okay. I have a different configuration now that I'm sharing. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and allow me in the next 15 minutes or so to lay down a couple of bricks to the foundation of the discussion of today, which announces to be very interesting. Well, as Ludwig explained, because I'm a policy officer, I will start with some policy aspects and recall three main drivers for the developments that we see today in the society, in Europe, and in energy in particular. So we have the well-known strategy, I suppose, European Green Deal, which has some very ambitious targets, among them being to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And one of the key priorities refer to the energy and catering for the energy trilemma, so to supply clean, affordable, and secure energy. And we have the Fit for 55 package, which is the legal package, a number of quite comprehensive different regulations that will allow to reduce the net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030, so as to be on track for climate neutrality by 2050. And a new addition as of last year, rather unfortunately, I would say, is the REPowerEU plan, which came in the wake of the unprovoked and unjustified Russian invasion of Ukraine, which triggered the need to have our energy transition even at a faster pace and to decouple from the fossil fuel dependencies from Russia. Well, what are some of the implications? I just put here the targets that we had for integrating renewables in the share of the energy consumed in the EU. So we started with a well-known 2020 target of 20%, which was actually overachieved. We had 22% renewables in the final energy consumption. And then we had various developments becoming more and more ambitious. We had a recast directive of renewables, the so-called RED II directive, which set in 2018 a target of 32%. And then the Green Deal and finally the REPowerEU plan became even more ambitious. So the final Commission proposal was 45% renewables by 2030, which is discussed by co-legislators. And you probably heard about the the initial agreement, political agreement between the co-legislators, the Council and the Parliament, which is basically an average of the top two. It's 42.5% by 2030. What does that mean in reality? I mean, what are the figures showing us? And I have brought here some data from Acer, which actually is based on data from ENTSO-E, that shows that the generation from renewables overtakes the generation from fossil fuels. And if we look at the top two, where we have wind and solar, which are non-dispatchable, intermittent, we understand the need for flexibility in the system to cater for this non-dispatchable and intermittent generation. And then we look at the transformation, the deep transformation of the energy system. And we have several elements there. We have the decarbonization part that I've mentioned, the drivers. We have the decentralization, the distributed renewables, which are basically redesigning the grids, especially the distribution grids, connected at the lower voltage levels. So these are clear needs for flexibility in the system. But on the other side, and there are things that Michele actually mentioned, we have the means and opportunities to provide this flexibility. We have the system integration, so coupling different energy carriers together and the electrification. This brings additional flexibility. And we have the digitalization as a key enabler. Well, looking at the provision of flexibility in the system, I won't take too much time. It was clearly explained by Michele. I just wanted to say that I hope you can still see my screen, just checking.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. We have the more traditional sort of flexibility that we know coming from flexible generation, the pumped hydro, the interconnectors to bring flexibility from a system point of view, so connect countries to each other and help each other's system. But we have these other types of flexibility which are very new. So coming from the system integration, we have the power to X, for instance, power to hydrogen. We have virtual power plants that are catering for both flexible generation and aggregation of demand response. We have this demand response in itself. We have smart EV charging and smart and digital grids, which are enabling all of it. And here is just, is just an image from a recent study that we have. And I just wanted to show you, speaking of the profound grid transformation, what it looks like. So instead of a system that was just drawing electricity from the higher voltage levels and delivering to consumers, now we have a very active edge of the grid and very active not only consumers, but players in the energy system. So we have smart buildings, we have smart EV charging, bidirectional EV charging, so vehicle to grid services. We have energy communities, we have virtual power plants, we have distributed renewables, and so on. And in the same study that we had a scenario that identified opportunities and possibilities to deliver flexibility by 2050. And that reinforced the message that I mentioned earlier. So there are not only needs, but actual clear sources, availabilities, and opportunities to do that. And these ones here are just outlining the digitally enabled flexibilities, which was quantified of over 580 possible gigawatts of capacity to amass until 2050 and deliver flexibility to the system. And that would cover up to 90% of the total flexibility needs. Right. So on the one hand, I said that we have the clear needs, and the good news is that we have the means to do that. But how can we do this? How can we make it all work, and how can we make it work at the scale that is required by the system? And there are quite several ingredients here. The kind of discussions we are having today, it's one of them that could bring and build momentum and synergies and generate action. But I would refer today at only two main parts that we are mostly dealing with. So first of all, it's of course the EU legal framework, which enables flexibility. And I started with the electricity market design, the directive and regulation of 2019, that I would say set the basis for delivering flexibility services to the grid by creating new players in the electricity markets like aggregators and energy storage suppliers. So clear roles in the electricity market to deliver flexibility services by enshrining a number of principles, including that any consumer has the right to provide flexibility and to monetize it, by ensuring the mechanism that this flexibility is valued on the electricity markets and is monetized, and so on. There are many different provisions on that. And furthermore, to strengthen those provisions, recently, so in March this year, there was a proposal, you've probably saw it, to improve the electricity market design and amend both the directive and electricity regulation. And this proposal includes quite a number of elements that are greatly conducing to deploying even more the flexibility. So on the one hand, we need to properly and swiftly implement in all the member states the provisions of the directive. On the other hand, the Commission is now proposing new and enhanced mechanisms based on the lessons learned and the discussions with the stakeholders so far, and trying to remove some of the bottlenecks that we saw. So in this proposal, some of the mentioned provisions for enhancing flexibility are things like requiring the national regulatory authorities to assess and report on the flexibility needs in the national systems, and look in particular at the demand side response and storage potential to fulfill those needs. And then, based on those reports, each member state will establish an indicative national objective for demand side response and for storage. And the proposal also includes provisions in support of support schemes for flexibility, and discusses the principles of grid tariffs for both transmission and distribution levels that need to support flexibility. And these tariffs should be based not only on the capital expenditure, but also on the operational expenditure components. This is perhaps a bit more technical, but this is one of the bottlenecks that was flagged so far, that the grid tariffs are not conducive enough to flexibility, and we are proposing to do something about it. And there are these, so these are the general elements for the electricity market, the stepping stones that are describing everything, but there are also a number of more targeted pieces of regulation. So for, one area that we have work ongoing is a network code, a so-called network code on demand response. So rules for the grid operators to deal with demand response and use it in the system and incentivize it. There's also under preparation an implementing act on interoperability requirements and procedures to access data required for demand response. So this data coming basically from smart meters. And there are other non-regulatory actions. We have an action plan on digitalizing the energy system, which includes a number of elements that would support flexibility in the energy systems. And we are proposing, the Commission will soon propose a code of conduct for the interoperability of energy smart appliances. So the appliance manufacturers to adhere to a code of conduct, allowing their products to participate, to be interoperable and participate easier in demand response schemes. So this is the legal part that I wanted to mention. The second part, the second key ingredient is the research and innovation part. And when I presented the types of flexibility, and I stressed that there are some very new elements there, clearly, because we have new elements, we need to look at them, to come up with innovative solutions, to test them, to scale them up and deploy them. And research and innovation actions are the great enabler to do so. And I've mentioned here in terms of research and innovation, we have two key elements here. One is the proposals. So we need to set the key priorities on research and innovation at a European level, together with individual member states and regions. And this is the kind of cooperation that Michele mentioned. So we put our collective minds together and come up with the priorities to focus the funding and the future projects. And I've put here two ETIP SNET key elements, key works. It's a roadmap. The first one is a roadmap, 10-year roadmap. And the other one is a more detailed for portion of 4 years, an implementation plan that look at advise what should be the key innovation actions. And if you look at these, flexibility, it's everywhere. In the first document, for instance, I remember a couple of very good figures also that are mapping in a visual way the flexibility needs in the grids with the types of projects and the types of research priorities that should be funded. So these are it's the planning part where we set the priorities and then we get to fund them and implement projects. And here we have the Horizon Europe program, 95 billion euros over 7 years, 15 of them being for climate, mobility, and energy. And we have the Clean European Technology Partnership, so the coordination between the member states, which the Commission co-funds. And all these are including calls looking at Horizon Europe, there are many calls that are funding projects dealing with flexibility on a number of different topics, very different. It's very little time to explain them. And I just wanted to mention as an example, we have this vibrant community of projects funded under Horizon Europe, the bridge community. And if you have a look at its brochure and you look for flexibility, there are many, many excellent projects. I couldn't pick up just 1 or 2 or 5 because I would do injustice to the others. So I will stop here. I see the moderator popping up, so it's time for me to stop. Just wanted to conclude with the message that on the one hand, we need to coordinate action in setting the priorities for research and innovation between the European levels and the member states. And then in the implementation phase, we need to pool resources and work together. So in this way, we use the best the resources we can and in the most effective ways. Thank you.
Well,
Can't hear you.
I think you're muted, Ludwig.
hello?
I think you have some technical issues with Ludwig. He probably cannot connect his audio device. Well, then while Ludwig tries to set up his device, I will take over a minute. And I would first of all like to thank very much George for his presentation and for giving us an overview about the initiatives and about, well, first of all, the directions and the policies of the European Commission on the development of the integrated energy system and on the importance of the flexibility services and of the flexibility aspect. I don't know if Ludwig is back with us. Oh, that's very good, Ludwig. We can hear you.
No, thank you for taking over. There was an issue. But you are the best moderator anyway. Yeah, let's quickly go on. I wanted to say we know that George will stay with us. He is a good listener. He listens to whatever he can get. And at the end of the session, I think I will ask him mainly what is the relation of the Commission to the local municipal level or something like that. But as Michele said correctly, let's listen to some experts on what is the characteristics and needs of flexibilities, where do we need them, what is the relation of grid infrastructure and flexibilities, maybe a bit with a focus on distributed flexibilities and maybe a bit on demand side management, but it's way more than that. I do call upon Ilaria.
So, good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Ilaria Loza is a researcher at RSE, and I know her since long, and I know that you have been researching a lot about flexibilities, yes. More than you can say in 15 minutes, but you are the fastest speaking woman I know, so go ahead and share your slides, please.
Okay, let's start with sharing the slides. So, okay, I will start by saying that in my presentation, I'd like to give you some examples of those projects that has been mentioned also by George in the final part of this presentation, and the projects that are testing the possibility to exploit local flexibility to solve the conventional problems that characterize the grid in the past, but also are expected to happen in the future. So, and just try to launch this presentation this way. So just I try to not repeat the concept that has been said before my presentation, but I just wanted to add that the recent policy documents issued by the European Commission, like the Green Deal, are calling for a fundamental transformation of the power system, and not only to integrate renewables for conventional purposes, but also the call for a complete transformation of the business models of the network operators, DSO, and especially DSOs, that must, of course, take care of the conventional function, that is ensuring the safe and reliable functioning of the system, but also they must become enablers of a new kind of services and new market. Welcoming the possibility of innovative actors like aggregators or local energy communities to contribute to the safe, cheap, and reliable operation of the energy sector. So I just start with this slide that has been taken from the literature, which is a very conventional, let's say, slides that has been taken by this report, by this paper. And we know from the conventional literature that not only conventional power plants, but also renewable power plants like photovoltaics, hydro or storage units, but also loads, are technically able to provide what are today called ancillary services. I mean, services that are used by the balance responsible party to ensure an adequate functioning of the system. For example, voltage control, congestion management, optimization of grid losses, and so on and so forth. And these services usually conventionally are purchased by the ancillary service market. What we want to demonstrate with the research project is that these services can be also enabled by local resources that are connected to all voltage level of the systems, and can be used by the network operators for their daily day-to-day operation in order to ensure a safe and adequate functioning of the system. So the big challenge here is how to enable all these distributed resources, even at the medium voltage level, to provide these ancillary services that can be then combined to increase the flexibility of our grids. And this can also result in a reduction of the cost for operating and building the systems, but also in an increase of the participation of end customer to the management of the grid, which is putting the consumer at the center of energy sector, as stated by the Green Deal. In these slides, I just want to briefly describe how the business model of the network operators will change in future thanks to the participation of distributed energy sources, in particular to the DSOs. So, for example, let's take the example of the congestion management and how to solve the congestions that are likely to happen in the future because of the increase of load in a network in the grid. So when I'm, for example, in the task of identifying the new investments that are needed to cope with the increase of the load in the 10 years horizon. Currently, the DSO is using these paradigms. So today, if I let's say foresee that in the next year I'm expecting to have congestion in the grid, I to plan an investment for reinforcement of the existing grid. This means building new lines or building new transformers. However, thanks to the contribution of distributed resources, we can also try to control the load and generation that are currently present. And these, for example, I can ask the controllable loads to reduce their consumption, or in order to avoid congestion in the grid, if I am the owner of those assets. But this is something that is not allowed by regulation, because it can represent an unfair competition. So the DSO in many countries are not allowed to own his own assets to exploit flexibilities. So what happens in the future is that I can try to ask the distributed resources of flexibility meaning not only distributed energy sources like PV panels or small storage units or local energy communities, but also loads to provide flexibility services upon a specific request that is coming from the network operators. And I can, so if I expect to have a congestion in the day ahead, I can ask the end users connected to the grid to adjust their load or their production in order to avoid those congestions. And this can be done by mandatory signals, meaning tariffs, meaning tariff. So I can have a specific tariffs in the field, so I can pay somehow the customers with a discount in the electricity tariff, or I can have some voluntary mechanisms that are, for example, bilateral agreements, so or a reduction of the electricity bill in the end, or either if there is a huge liquidity, I can think about the creation of a local market for flexibility, where all the customers that are connected to the grid can, let's say, reduce their consumption in order to avoid the expected congestions. And or in the last resources, I can also think of introducing dynamic tariff, real-time tariff that changes according to the state of the grid. So when I'm close to the congestion time slice, the cost for consumption will be higher. And then in hours that are not so congested, the cost of energy will be lower. Thanks to these kind of innovative services, the DSO can avoid to every investments that are, for example, building new lines or building new transformers. And so this is a result. This will result in an overall reduction of the cost for all the customers, all the users of the grid, not only the TSO but also the end users. The question is, how can we make this transformation happen? And in the next slides, I'd like to show you two examples of two projects, one related to transmission side and the other one related to distribution side, where we have tested all digital solution, market schemes, customer engagement solution to prove that this, let's say, this scheme can be implemented with real customer in real energy sector. So as I mentioned before, the first project is Osmose, which was a project that was ended last year, and it was focused on transmission system, transmission grid. And there was 4 demonstrators in which 4 TSOs have experimented different solutions to enhance the flexibility of the transmission grids. The solution includes innovative market mechanism for cross-border allocations of cross-border lines, the participation of large customer to the flexibility of the grid, integration of innovative technologies like storage unit or dynamic line ratings, and different combinations to enhance flexibility of the transmission grid to solve specific problems of the grid, especially congestion of the transmission line. And the other project that I will describe later on is the Platone, which is an ongoing project that is all focused on distribution side. The scope of this project is to integrate customer in the real-time management of the grid, and in order to help the DSO to solve problems mainly related to congestion management and voltage control. And this project has been tested in 3 pilot projects that are distributed in Italy, in Germany, and in Greece. So this is the lessons learned we have identified with this project. I'll start with Platone, which is the ongoing project. The innovative concept that have been implemented in all the 3 demos is that thanks to the digital, we have created a blockchain market platform that enable the DSOs to have a full visibility of the grid, medium voltage and low voltage grid, and to identify ex ante, which could be the congestion that are likely to happen in the grid, and therefore in the day ahead to request to the customers who participate, that are both producer but also end customers, final customer, to help him in solving the expected congestions and by adjusting their consumption or production profile. This mechanism has been done with a digital platform that simulates a local market for flexibility, where all the flexibility requests coming from the DSOs are then sent to this platform this market platform, and this market platform collects and combines all the flexibility offers that are elaborated by end users in order to identify the new load and generation profiles that will not cause problems to the grid. And this also incorporates the solution of digitalization, but also takes care of the anonymity and security of the data of the end users. I just want to show you the example of the German demo, which has implemented this concept in order to enable the functioning of a local energy community. This demo is placed in a rural area in the north of Germany. It is equipped with many PV panels in a rural area. And so the problem that they are experiencing is that they have a lot of production that is backfeeding from the low voltage to medium voltage grid. And so they are trying to experiment the virtual island, where this area is operated like a single area, a single island that is not congesting the medium voltage line. And on the contrary, this local energy community is helping the DSO to relieve congestion both in medium voltage, but also both in low voltage, but also in medium voltage grid, thanks to this flexibility that is enabled by this market platform. Basically, this is what happens. So the digital platform is able to control the power flows at the low voltage, medium voltage grid. And in case there is a congestion, the platform installed is able to control the power exchange at this level. And thanks to the flexibility that is represented by flexible loads or household batteries, but also the community battery energy storage, it is possible to avoid to operate this island as a virtual island without a power exchange between medium voltage and low voltage. But also this island, in case the medium voltage feeder is subjected to congestion, can reduce or change its injection in the medium voltage in order to relieve the congestion, or either it can inject its production or withdraw this production only in a limited time of the day, so that this would reduce the congestion of the medium voltage load, especially in summertime when many PV panels are injecting these problems in the grid, the production in the grid. Another example is then, this is an example of the Italian demo, which is on the contrary, is located in a city center of Rome. So we move from a rural area to an urban area. And in this case, we are trying to experiment the possibility of prosumers to solve the congestion that are expected between the medium voltage and the voltage grid. In this area, which is located in the district of Centocelle, there are prosumers that are residential user equipped with PV panels, and they can provide the flexibility services to the grid. They are now performing the test in which the DSO is sending signals to the end user to reduce or modify their production in order to solve the expected congestions. And in this demo, they also include a passive user. So even the customer who are not equipped with PV panels can, let's say, offer flexibility that is, I guess, 10% of the electricity of their smart meter contracted power. And they can also help the DSO to solve the expected congestion. In this demo, we have already some example of which could be the preliminary results of this situation. So, for example, the ACEA, which is the DSO who is helping running this project, estimated that they will have a peak of 3,300 megawatt in 2022. But thanks to the use of flexibility, they are able to reduce by 10% the power peak that is expected in 10 years. And this will result maybe in the reduction of investments that are needed to cover the expected growth of demand. So this demonstrates that thanks to local flexibility, there is going to be a significant benefits also at the medium voltage level for the whole community. And so, for example, once again, here they're proving that they expect that in 2032, all over the year. When they expect to have a need of 250 gigawatt-hour of flexibility that is needed to safely operate the room area, thanks to the contribution of local flexibility like storage unit, electric vehicles, and also heating and cooling services. So this demonstrates that there is the possibility of local source of flexibility to actively help the DSOs in managing the grid and also reducing the need for conventional investments.
So may I interrupt you? May I interrupt you? People can see the osmose, but we are running out of time. Sorry, Ilaria.
Okay.
And I hope it's not impolite, but say some sentences on osmose, and we will share the slides with people.
Sure. Osmose, once again, just to show you that this is in the south part of Italy, and they have exploited the possibility of solving local congestion using larger renewables, power plants, wind farms, industrial loads, and industrial loads. And just to prove you can find more information in the Osmose website at this report. This is they use these flexibility sources to solve local congestion, and just to prove you that thanks to this the contribution of aggregated loads, those results have been obtained. So reduction of rest curtailment, improvement of forecast of day ahead overloads, reduction in error of rest forecast, and these are significant results that have been used thanks to the activation of local flexibility even at transmission line. So just a few final remarks. All the solution that has been displayed in the
Ilaria,
projects.
can people read that themselves, please? I have to run because we are losing our speakers from the panel at 3:30. We will share that with you guys. The final remarks are written. Thanks, Ilaria. I knew that you can say more than many people in 15 minutes. What I got is the impression that there is many flexibilities around, many flexibilities, types of flexibilities. Some of them are distributed, some of them are with the customer, the consumer, but many are also with others. We need to discuss a bit what is the real role. Is it worthwhile collecting these distributed flexibilities with demand-side management? George touched that. I think we will discuss that on the panel after Professor Hamacher will have given us his insights as to what types of flexibilities do we need.
That is
Thomas.
all. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ilaria. Professor Hammer is from the Technical University of München, and he looks a lot on the German system, but also on the European system, and can say us something about what is needed.
Yeah, so maybe I have not completely given them the right talk. I will talk a little bit about what is needed, but I would like to focus a lot actually on the distribution grid level, which I think is highly debated, especially when it comes to questions like the energy communities and so forth. So let's start with a very general picture of. I mean, we know we will have to integrate a lot of renewable energies in the future. Maybe when we look into the European context, we don't know exactly how many renewables it will be. I can also imagine that at least in the European context, we will still see some other options also. I mean, if we just look to France, it's very likely that France will not only operate renewable energies in 2030, 40, and 50, but that is, of course, another question which we don't want to go too much into detail here. So when it comes to the possibilities to integrate the intermittent supply, I think we should always keep in mind that there are a few options which are very important. I guess at least for latitudes like Europe, I guess one of the first very important option is the optimal generation mix. Unfortunately, this is quite often forgotten, and especially it is sometimes forgotten when we go to very small scales, because this an optimal generation mix is usually easier realized on a bigger scale than on a urban or village scale. And it is really, I can urge every one of you, if you ever have the opportunity, to look into time series of solar and the time series of wind, and then to the combined time series of solar and wind. And you will see that a lot of the seasonality issues which we either have with wind or with PV are solved, or at least partially smoothed, if we make an optimal mix out of wind and PV. And I think that is something which cannot be stressed often enough. We need both options, and we might not be able to get both options at for example, a local scale. Therefore, it's so important that we always keep this bigger scale in our mind. Then, of course, if we would have a discussion like this maybe 12 or 15 years ago, people would have discussed a lot about the option of super grids. It was for some time, it was very fashionable. I think it was also promoted to some extent by the EU, which makes a lot of sense because it would be a European project. It would be something which would bring Europe together. Unfortunately, I think it faces, of course, a lot of resistance. People are not very much happy if there are some high voltage lines built behind their houses, but nevertheless, still the option to connect bigger areas within Europe or within any continent would lead to a much easier integration of intermittent supply, especially about it helps to integrate wind. It might not help so much with solar power. This is also something which we need to keep in mind here. Then, of course, the next option is something which I think we will see a lot in the coming years to be implemented, is the sector coupling, especially to heat. Heat, of course, also to mobility, but heat, I think, will offer even more options here than the mobility. But many of the things which I say now about the heat is also true for the mobility sector. So heat offers us the possibility of an easy storage. Yeah? So we can, whether we produce then the heat a little earlier or a little later might not be so important, because we can store the heat. And here again, it comes the question, when can we store heat very easily? Actually, we can store very easily when we have large amounts of it. And that makes it very interesting to look here, especially in the industry sector, when we will replace sooner or later all the natural gas heaters by quite often electric heaters. Then they might work together with the heat storage, and this will offer a lot of flexibility. The similar thing we can do when we talk about district heating systems, and here we have also showed in the past that will add a lot to the flexibility. Of course, we can do here also things in the residential sector, but of course the residential sector will never offer, let's say, flexibility of a couple of days of storage. That might be more a day-night storage option, which we can have here. And then, of course, we have the classical, what we are usually, I mean, when it comes to flexibility, these are the things which comes to our mind. The first usually is of course batteries. Here we have to see how the price of batteries will develop in the coming years, and of course we might see here decreases, especially due to the large increase of electric cars, which we can probably also use as a storage option. So if some of the extrapolations of the cost come true, this will certainly be on the long term also an option which we will implement more in detail, will be heavily implemented. Of course, let's say something which is certainly a game changer once it is fully implemented would be new chemical energy carriers, like, for example, hydrogen or whatever. Of course, these energy carriers, once they would be there, they offer, of course, actually a very large storage possibilities, and this might have then a huge impact on the whole energy market, especially the electricity market, if these new chemical energy carriers are originally produced from electricity. We might see quite a smoothing of the whole electricity sector, and that might have some let's say feedback to these flexibilities. So we should when we talk about Europe being climate neutral in 2050, having then everything probably covered by renewables or nuclear, having a lot of, let's say, new chemical energy carriers, we should be aware that this has a huge impact actually also on the market designs. Let's come to the distribution grids. Something which we are very much interested in. You see here on the right, this is a picture of our COSIS laboratory here at the TU Munich, where we actually are able and capable of simulating a distribution grid with the connection of the electricity sector to the heat sector. We can model various topologies and everything what you can imagine. And we do this now with the intention to really understand the different options which are possible when we talk about the flexibilization of especially the distribution grid. Of course, we can, when we start with a very idealistic and very economically driven point, we would say maybe we have some new local energy markets which are even driven by something like dual distributed local marginal pricing, which is let's say would be a very, very fascinating tool to steer actually all the congestions and to bring incentives for all the flexibilities directly to the customers. It looks like a very nice idea, and it's also on paper idea from an economic point of view quite attractive, but it might actually come with a very high cost, overhead cost, and it might be something which would not be so easily implemented, maybe in some very nice case studies, but to have this really on the very broad scale might be tricky. We have, of course, another option, and I will focus more actually on this, is that we have active elements in our distribution grids. We have active elements which can be somehow incentivized from the outside world. And these active elements, for example, they can switch on some production, they can increase some consumption. All these kind of things are possible. And here we would probably need some kind of signals and some kind of tariffs which make this attractive for the customers. But I will say a few words about that in a minute. Of course, we still have the possibility that we might have really more passive distribution grids, and that the optimization is actually only on the building or company level, and we do not have any interaction between the actors on this level. We have just recently published a paper, actually it was published today as far as I heard, which shows that even this option, if it is nicely implemented, offers already quite a lot of flexibility. And when it comes to the, as before mentioned, reduction in extension costs of the grid, we might already get a lot of the benefits just if we would have implemented such systems where we have very good home energy management systems, or in a company level, a very good energy system which at least utilizes to a large extent the self-production which is in the plants. So let's look how I could imagine that we in future do this kind of, let's say, compromise between this on one side more passive structure, which would not allow any kind of coordination between the customers, and let's say on the other side this very economically pronounced new local energy market, which looks very nice in paper but might not be so easy to be implemented. So now we are looking here to our problem. So we will see, of course, a lot of PV on the roofs in the future. This is something which I guess we will see it everywhere. We will see it in the household sector. We will see it in the commercial sector. We will see it in the also in the industry sector. We will see also a very strong coupling between the electricity and the heat. I think that is also given by the issues we had with gas the last 2 years. This is certainly something which is happening, and so therefore we will have an optimal self-consumption. This is something which will be implemented, and I think we're still. I mean, if you look to the products which are offered on the market, you're sometimes a little disappointed to see that maybe they're you have an easy inverter which is connected to your battery, but if you like to connect it to your heat pump and your charging station, it is already tricky, and it might need some you need to make this control by yourself. On the other side, we will hopefully see a lot of extension of the PV and wind, and not only on the roofs, but we need much more than that. We need more free field PV, and we will also need a lot of wind everywhere. And just as a suggestion here from my side, when it comes to ancillary services from the grid, we should probably focus on this. Yeah, we focus on the big PV free field areas. We focus on the large wind areas, and if we should offer all what we need for frequency control, for voltage control. I think we can do that here, and we might not bother this area with it, because it will be more complicated. Here might be rather simple. But still, so how can we do some compromise? And I think this we can if we look a little bit more in the data which we already have, and we will be able to characterize regions. I think I have seen already a lot of approaches in this, but that can be done even better. And then, of course, we could develop very simple control strategies for this type region. So we have a region where we have a lot of electromobility, a lot of heat pumps. We have regions where we have hardly heat pumps, and so on. And then we know, I mean, we have regions, there is a lot of PV on the roofs, and we know this just from if we don't know, we just look into satellite data, and then we get the information where we have how much PV. And so we can do this kind of characterization. And then we should really think about very simple incentives like more lighting system, green, yellow, and red, and say, okay, if it's green, you should consume. If it's yellow, you should be a little cautious. If you're red, you should not consume at all. And of course, once you allow or you comply to such a tariff, you get, of course, some reductions and so on. So maybe instead of thinking now about rather complex systems of new markets, we might think more about such simple structures, which would help to really to bring these flexibilities also in the household sector or in the company sector on the market, but with a very simple technical and communication issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thomas. That was crystal clear. That was a message. Hey, and normally I would say that all my panelists can present themselves in length, but we are a bit in trouble because Jan Segerstam has to leave soon. So if you allow me to introduce everybody quickly, you show your faces, and then we start a bit with interviewing Jan because he has to leave soon. Okay, so whom do we have? Let me introduce them quickly. I said it in the beginning, Nikos and Venizelos from Greece and Cyprus, both respected professors with a long practical experience in energy supply and power grids, also in practical terms. We have Philippe Dumas, amongst others, serving at European Geothermal Energy Council. We had heard that it's a bit about sector coupling, so we thought that it is also important to have not electricity people here. We have Teresa. I cannot count your professions. Amongst others, you are serving in ADENE, the Energy Agency of Portugal. I think this is the most important today, but you will change that. And we have a real mayor, Sabine Rödel, which I don't see yet. Sabine, can you switch on? I hope she doesn't have, yeah, here she is. Mayor of a small village, but with a strong professional and financial background, also in industries and enterprises. So she is knowing what she is saying here. And we have Jan Segerstam. Jan Segerstam is from Enerim in Finland, a specialist on ICT, I would say, and always around when it comes to intelligent energy systems. We know each other since long, so I said, I invite you. And as I know that you have to catch a train at 3:30, let me ask you right away, why are you here? what is it that you would feel that has to be told to us in terms of technology available for all doing that? And maybe also right away, what is the role of policy? You have a unique chance. You have the first say, but you have to switch on. Jan? Now we are getting something. Is it my problem? Can anybody hear Jan? Jan, you have to switch on.
No, we cannot hear him.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now we are on.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for having me, and sorry for the schedule. So basically, flexibility is a very important subject and something that we're seeing being taken up in many nations. During the last critical winter, we witnessed a critical change in energy usage also in the Finnish energy system and in the Nordic energy system, where we were able to achieve a 6% decline in overall energy usage. And at the same time, we were able to curtail and to have voluntary actions on flexibility when we had serious shortages that came up from the changed geopolitical situation. Now, taking that into account, we also were able to take into use some of the mechanisms that we have generated now in the advanced energy system. So we could put in control commands, we could work with flexible resources, and we could have industry reflect their flexibility on a various number of markets. So not only the intraday, but the regulating power markets, and also then aggregation of different assets. The thing is, technology is available. So technology is something that we can use immediately to achieve flexibility. The market structures are different in different countries, and that means that you will have to then take into account the structures that are there. And many of those are driven by policy, and many local and regional initiatives that could bring about new flexibility by aggregation face hurdles that come from the fact that they basically then infringe on different kinds of mechanisms that are already there, or that there are actually no markets in which to operate. Now, we heard in the last presentations briefly also about how you can simply do this by tariff. Yes, you can, but things change. And when you look at the volatile energy system, having a tariff change will not allow us to flex in the way that the renewable distributed energy system needs us to flex. So that is why we need the mechanisms, and we also need the policymakers to further those mechanisms. And then we need the knowledge so that the local decision makers can know how can they further the flexibility without instigating startups that then fail because they didn't understand where they can actually bid, where they can actually bring in the flexibility, because there are mechanisms. But that's kind of a very short intro.
That was, yes, just recently we met in Vaasa in Finland. We had a long discussion, and you elaborated a bit on the role of policy in relation to industry. Can you repeat that? What in your sense, what is the role of the industry? Of course, providing the technology or something, and the role of policy, especially when it comes to local level policies. Is that there something that you learned in Finland?
Yeah. So really the capability of collaboration and systemically changing the way that we work. We've achieved the capability to actually use, for instance, smart meter information all the way through the value chain. So we do our balance settlement every day with the hourly values, and in the future now with quarterly values for every single metering point every day. And the markets that are out there are also configured to use this data. So the policymakers, the industry, and the regulators have been able to jointly work together to make this kind of a holistic system work. So
They
the
have been
systemic
able,
approach.
you say they have been able. Did they also do it? Would the policymakers, say on a local level, be interested in interpreting such data?
Yes, I would say that they would be. And we're seeing initiatives, for instance, where we have city districts where, for instance, the city of Helsinki instigated a public competition for a new positive energy district, taking into account the structures that were put in place by the ministry, by the national regulator, and by also then the different players. So even though there is a municipal energy entity, Helsinki Energy, and the city is involved, the city didn't decide to kind of just arbitrarily use that engine, but opened it up for everyone. And we got interest from different kinds of flexibility providers and also technology providers, so that we could then start work on such a district without then kind of immediately going into the hurdles of the market mechanism.
I wonder how long you can stay, but I think that it would be wise now to talk to a representative of the local level, to Sabine Meyer. But maybe first I would ask Philip. I said you are here representing the sector coupling to some degree. I don't know how deep you dig in your geothermal discussions into local heat pump discussions, but do you feel like we have enough cooperation on, say, local level and local industries when we want to bring it forward? We heard that sector coupling is important. That is heat. Heat means people. That is close to the residential areas, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. I think what is clear, and that's why I really like what Thomas was saying before, is that we cannot simplify this debate on sector coupling. Too much time we speak about one thing on world electrification is much more complex than that.
Yeah.
Just to illustrate some key issues. One, a small sector in heating and cooling is the cooling demand. Last summer in Valencia, in Spain, it was really hot summer. High demand in cooling. The grid was not able to answer, blackout. So we see that what is the issue in heating and cooling is that you have a seasonal demand, no? What you don't have for electricity or for mobility, what was just explained by Thomas. And that is creating issue in the energy system, because more and more you will have electricity provided for heating and cooling, being for different form, being for, you mentioned individuals, but also it will be a lot of for industry at different temperature levels at local level. And here we will see the issue of how you ask these people using electricity for heating and cooling to also contribute to the electricity market. And if they provide flexibility, how you will reward also this flexibility. So, and here, one, I think what's still missing in all the discussion from today is thermal storage. Because what we see will be key will be the thermal storage in all the sector coupling.
Okay, but that is at least something that we could even imagine that big companies provide that or something. But when it gets distributed, and I'm coming back to what you said, Jan, maybe it's not a question of policy, but it's at least a question of local governments and maybe the mayors. They are close to the people. How could we open the minds, or how could we foster action in local societies? I mean, we talk about research, of course. Do we know enough how we could get, and I say it, to the hearts of the people?
Yes, we do know how to actually work together. And we have technologies, but we need awareness and we need understanding of the constraints and the structures. So just coming back to the heat storage issue, what we're seeing also is that there are being electric furnaces fitting into old CHP plants, so that we are now taking in excess wind. We are heating the large heat batteries of the distributed heating system to then supply the areas and cities with the heat coming from that wind. So we're kind of coupling sectors already there, in addition to then, of course, using CHP where that is efficient.
Okay. So I think you have to run. You said at the latest at 3:30. We would love to have you here, but thanks for coming, even if you are in a hurry. But as we are talking people, local level, Sabine, I mean, you are a mayor. with whom do you talk about such issues and why?
I mean, I talk, or we talk as a municipality with lots of people. We talk first with the energy suppliers, obviously, because they are a big player in the market. We also talk with the people on the street, really, because they come to us and they say, look at the prices for energy, we cannot afford it anymore. We talk also to to the industry, the building industry. We also talk to high-level authorities when we talk about barriers which we need to reduce. So we have an awful lot of stakeholders we talk to.
But come on, forgive me for asking it. How do you know about what you talk? You are a tech specialist, you are a political specialist, but you are not an energy specialist.
Exactly. So you have to find the people who can talk from a technical perspective, but you will only manage that as a team. So we have an energy team in our town, and these are people from really from the technical side. We also have marketing specialists in the group, and so we try as a team to manage the problems we face. Because I cannot do it on my own. That's not the question. Yeah. I come from the legal perspective, and I can do lots of things from that part. But at the end of the day, you need all the people who can talk about the different issues.
And you said it. You have such a, I don't know how you call it, energy team or something. The team that's not only the local government, that's not only the local administration, that's a group of citizens. So who is that?
That's citizens. There are people who have some small companies dealing with electricity. That are people who install PV-Flächen, photovoltaic. That's also the energy supplier here in town, as well as across the border. I'm talking to regarding wind energy. So we have these people, and they are happy to engage in the city, and that's really where we are grateful for.
I know your municipality quite well. You have a luxury. Maybe you explain a bit what does it mean to provide electricity. You have this Hindelang provider of and manager of energy, a company, or what is it?
I mean, we are a little village with about 5,000 inhabitants. We are here in the Alps. We have a lot of tourism, so we have fluctuating electricity needs. We have lots of water. So about 100 years ago, the ancestors decided it might be sensible to have a company like a cooperation where you can participate to get the electricity needs, to fulfill the electricity needs of the area. And so about 300 people came together. They grounded this electricity community. And this is still today existing. We are part of this community, obviously, and we are very happy about it. And we try to develop the electricity sector together with this big player here in town.
And they are even involved in European projects. So
exactly,
we will see. But let's come back to the question that we had in the short introductory presentations, and I'm trying to ask a bit Nikos and also Venizelos and maybe also Philip, Teresa. When I looked at what Ilaria presented, that big picture, that big table in the beginning, there was a little column that said with 2 X's and I don't know how many empty boxes, that's demand side management. So this is where everybody, men and women, can contribute. Most of the other sources of flexibilities were generators, big generators, gas, whatever. Question to you specialists. Do we overstress the discussion of distributed flexibilities? Do we overstress the discussion on demand side management? Where should flexibilities, or where will they come from? What is your feeling or knowledge? Venizelos, Nikos.
Who do you ask?
You first, Nikos.
Okay. Flexibility is the key for the system to operate with a very large penetration of renewables. And of course, flexibility can come from various sources, can come from, as the time passes and more large generation is displaced by smaller generation, then more and more flexibility needs to come from distributed resources. This is where the demand side management comes into play. This is where the distributed generation comes into play. This is where small storage and also electric vehicles come into play. So the needs for flexibility are increasing constantly. There's a recent study by IEA that calculates the hour-to-hour ramping needs of the system. In 2021, from 25+% minus 15%, that will be raised by 2030 from plus 40% to minus 40%, which is a lot of resources that have to move very fast to be able to adapt to the change in the renewables. So flexibility is very important for the operation of the system, okay? And this is very important how the DSOs and TSOs deal with flexibility. And
but what you say, it would be a lot of flexibilities that is needed on demand side, and demand side more or less means people.
Yes, not only, however, there are also other sources of distributed resources. Of course, it's always people at the distribution level, but yes, there's a huge need. And the important thing, however, is how the DSOs and TSOs will mobilize and exploit flexibility, not only for operations, but also for the connection of the distributed resources. Because the more flexibility we need, the more distributed resources you can connect. This is related to what George said at the beginning about how the market today, through tariffs, encourages DSOs to use flexibility.
I was about to ask
that's key for this.
Venizelos, what happens in case we don't convince people to provide flexibility, to adapt? What happens? I mean, Nikos says then we cannot install so much renewables, or what else would happen? Would the entire system break down if we don't get to the consumers and to the hearts of the people?
Well, the answer is not easier. It's a bit complex in the sense that we need to understand that we have to become energy literate. And energy literate, it means a lot. It means everybody understanding their euros where are going and how they can make their life less costly, and that flexibility is a low-cost solution and is a smart solution. And so understanding it, that there are euros in for everybody, I think this is a very crucial question that we can answer, why we can be successful in that direction, provided that we approach it the correct way and take it from fundamental principles. We don't want changes to be like for like. We would like to be smart in that and try to introduce flexibility in various forms and ways. And I think quite importantly, what I would like to add to what Nikos said, there are two things. The first thing is that the grid has to be smarter in order to maximize the benefits of flexibility. And the second thing is that as we move along, implicit reaction of smart apparatus will be very important in managing flexibility. In other words, if we have these smart inverters reacting to the frequency needs of the system, that will be done through automatic reaction to the needs of the system. And this is quite important in managing the system forward. Also, thermostats or controllers, they can be smart in the sense that our fridge can be controlled between X and Y temperature, not a fixed temperature. Or
Venizelos, it's up to me. It's still up to me what refrigerator I buy, if I buy such a smart one or not. And I don't buy the smart one. Okay. How do you convince me?
Because I said it, the first thing that I said is that we have to become energy literate, because it means euros for you. When you go and you buy something that is more efficient, that it pays, you can do the same work with less I think you will understand it, and you will appreciate it, and you will decide. If we don't convince, then we will have to spend more, and the system would be more costly. I mean, solutions are always out there, but they are more costly. Flexibility is smarter and less cost.
So you don't want to get to my heart, you want to get to my brain, I understand.
Yeah.
Teresa, I mean, I was introducing you like also responsible in the ADENE, the Energy Agency of Portugal. Do you want to get to the brains or to the heart of the people?
First of all, let me correct you. I'm the CEO of a research and technology operator in Portugal that works for the government, which is the National Laboratory of Energy and Geology. And on this role, I'm part of the board of directors of ADENE. So this is my second. Okay, thank you. So I think I would call to discuss this question in another dimension. I think we had a very rich conversations today and discussions, but we are concentrated in the medium short term, and we need to bring to this subject governments, academia, NGOs, investors. And for that, we have to have the correct, transparent, confident, that brings trust information. And that's where we work for our government. We are experts on knowing our own natural resources, either renewables or geological, and we compile all this information to bring data so that governments can decide on the measures to take later, and investors can look to make better investments. And I give two examples. For governments, we recently mapped all our renewables in Portugal, and we identified places that are not environmental sensitive, and where renewable investments can be made. But we also did map the uses. Where are the uses? The big industry, or the cities, or the SMEs, and we are able to match the resources with the uses, and to optimize the way we deal with the system, as well as bringing the flexibility. For instance, combining different renewables. The sun shines during day, the wind normally blows during night. We have also, fortunately, a lot of water, so we many times can be completely renewable. And this is looking in a centralized way, but we can also look in a decentralized way. For instance, another example I give you, we mapped all our big industry, and we presented to the industrial associations like the cement, concrete, how they can decarbonize their industry by using the local natural resources. And we identified, for instance, where they could build the solar power plants in the rooftops or in nearby regions, or if they will decarbonize better, faster with the wind, or if they should combine all this with hydrogen.
This is sector coupling. This is also sector coupling when you couple the energy sector with the cement sector and the concrete sector, right?
Yes, but this sector coupling can deal with the flexibility issue, we can say, at a higher level.
In the bigger level.
And this needs a lot of planning. and long-term planning, so that our short-term solutions are better optimized.
That brings me to a question, maybe to Philip and also to Teresa and whomsoever. We heard that the flexibility at the end does not come from the power system as such. To some degree it does, but it's the sector coupling and coupling power and heat. Philip, you said that. But we keep claiming that, but will we be implementing it? What would it mean to really implement such flexibility mechanisms of combined heat and power approaches? Who is the responsible? Is it the local layer? Is it the industry? Who is it who would have to promote and foster it?
Can I say some words? I think this has to be pushed by strategical action from the governments and from the municipal, the mayors, but first of all from governments, and then the governments have to communicate, have to address the municipalities as a whole or the regions, and incentivize those kind of political actions. We are really doing some work for the government. The government is buying it. Let's see if they can later on implement, so that the solutions really happen. Otherwise, we'll be doing we'll be investing without a strategy, and we need first of all a strategy.
We need strategy, we need guidance here. Maybe Philip, you can add a bit on this sector coupling before I ask Sabine how she feels when she gets pressed.
Yes, thank you. Just maybe to start, I agree with Venizelos, but also for the sector coupling in the heating sector. If we want people to have a constraint in flexibility, they will need to have a reward. It will be money. And it's all the question that we need to have also in the electricity market design is the value of the sector coupling, the value of storage, how you reward that to the people. When in the sector coupling, what we see today is that all the additional heating and cooling is led also to what will be the management of the DSO. And notably because all cities will be asked to have an energy action plan, especially heating and cooling action plan. They will need to map how they do the transition from a fossil fuel heating system to a decarbonized heating system, being with renewable electricity or renewable heating and cooling. And with this clear urban planning, we will have a first answer, but not a full answer, because as you mentioned correctly, Teresa, we will have industry, and industry are also outside cities. So what you need for me, and what is still the big question mark, is between this local level and this fully centralized national level, how you treat a regional level, no? How you combine also these systems more at an intermediary level between all the local and the national. And here is still the big question mark, how you reward that. And flexibility generation may be just a small word, because you mentioned about photovoltaic and wind. But us at geothermal, we also produce electricity in some areas, in Asturias, in Portugal, in Italy, we also that. And geothermal, we are base load. So not all renewable are intermittent. As geothermal, we are also base load. We are not a large provider, but we are base load. So in this discussion, energy mix, it's a bit more complex also.
Let me come back not to the technology, but to the political issue. I mean, often it is said that, sorry, George, I don't know if you still listen. Often it's said that the EC doesn't listen to the national and local level and that there's not enough cooperation between these levels. I don't know your position on that, but I would like to hear maybe the mayor first, Sabine. I mean, do you feel like, I don't know, being respected by the national governance, by the EU, by the EC? How does it work in this political silo, up and down?
I think respected, yes, that's not the question. For me, it's, as Teresa said, we need a strategy coming from the very top. And this strategy must be dropped down. And I think via dropping it down, we are losing flexibility, by not thinking the whole process completely through. And when I look at the requirements, what we should do, and then at the end of the day, what I can do because of other regulations which make it absolutely not possible doing what is required from the strategy, then it's a bit difficult when you are the last one in the row. When I think we're talking about wind, we talk about hydropower, we talk about photovoltaic, all sorts of things. And when I look at our village and having lots of unsanitary buildings, having sites of historic interest, having all nature protection areas, 80% of our landscape is nature protected. And then I go there and I said, what can I do? And the first answer is no, wind does not work. Photovoltaic on the buildings, yes, okay, but in the field, no, because of nature protection. When I talk about pumped storage, hydropower, no, that's not possible because it's nature protection. At the end of the day, we have to decide what we want. Do we want the energy? And at the end of the day, in a town like ours, there must be a decision, because it does not work as people think.
Yeah, but how do you feel? I mean, George said it, we have a Green Deal, we have Fit 55 and everything. We have more or less a strategy. Yeah. But then the next step would be like your energy group in Hindelang. They decide that they form an energy community. They want to maybe even maximize use of electricity when it's produced in their own PV. But then you come and say, hey, the commission said you need to be flexible. You should charge your vehicle when our sun is shining. How can you convince these people to do that? Just because there is a strategy on EU level?
No, the problem is the strategy on the EU level is on the green side, but it forgets all the other things. It doesn't help me if I have a strategy from one area, forgetting all the other areas. So the strategy has to consider what happens when I have historic interest, what happens if I'm nature protected. And this strategy must be a global strategy looking for all these topics. And then when I have an overall strategy, I can drop it down. And then, yes, people want this carbon neutrality. They want to do it, but you have to give them the opportunity. And if I have a chance telling my people, yes, from a financial perspective, you can afford it, and there are the technical possibilities to do it, and yes, you don't face barriers all the time which stop you doing it, then I have a chance. But when I say EU has a strategy from one side, and then we have we are not looking for the nature protection, because that is something which on EU level you have to look at both sides, and the strategy has to be not on the one side or the other.
Okay, what that means also, again, with sector coupling, tourism sector with agriculture sector, with energy sector. I mean, George, you are here. I mean, you are DG Energy. To which DGs do you talk when it comes to implementing Fit 55 or Energy Green Deal? Are you cooperating on EU level?
In all the Commission policies, each DG, which is responsible for a policy, has a duty to consult all the other DGs. Okay. So the coordination is done within the Commission services. But I just wanted to say that there's one thing to establish a level playing field, to put in place key enablers, to deploy services, and even to push them. Because as I mentioned in the initial market design that we had, we've put elements there to enable aggregation and so on. But because it didn't happen at the scale that we wanted, now there are additional pushes where we ask the member states to look at what are the flexibility needs, to draw up plans for that, and to respond to those plans with actions that take into account flexibility provisions on demand side and energy storage and so on. But then ultimately the delivery of flexibility, it's as I think it was mentioned here, it's quite a complex issue that involves many different players on the one hand. On the other hand, to my mind, it's a very customized thing which applies locally. The flexibility is local, even from the energy system point of view. The flexibility is local and caters for the local needs, like local congestion or balancing the grid in a certain. So I think there's a role for everybody to reconcile all these different aspects and see how can it all work. It might be overly complicated to come up with the magical solution at the EU level. How with the general prescription, how the energy policy should work hand in hand with the environmental protection. There are many different considerations, but probably not the silver ball to provide all the answers. And this is why we need the coordination of actors and different interests to work on this.
But what I hear and what we could agree is that we cannot just stay in our energy silo. We have to see, at least we have to talk to the other silos.
And we are definitely not doing that.
Yeah.
Can I add something regarding this collaboration between the different institutions, different sectors? What we did for the areas less environmental sensitive was, first of all, we put together all the entities that have a saying on this part. The Director General of Heritage, the Environmental Agency, the Director General on Energy and Geology, I already said the Environmental Agency and more, and the work was made together. Also, we used our geoportal because we are also the geological survey of Portugal. We have a strong geoportal, so we used this tool to map all the areas. But it was a collaborative work.
So it works. It's good. It's good examples. I don't know if, I mean, once upon a time I was in Évora, and it seemed like this Évora city in Portugal, there it worked. Everybody horizontally, vertically cooperated to make this a wonderful role model. Is that true?
Yes, it is an example which was led by ETIP, but I'm afraid the example stayed there. It was a very good example, but it was not replicated so far.
So we have Venizelos. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that this energy transition, we have to be innovative. It's not like for like. I mean, we are not giving something away and replacing it with something similar. It's a question, and I think that when we take everything into consideration, we have to make sure that if we want a certain level of quality of life, where is against something. I mean, to burn oil or to burn things that destroy nature is not the solution. So we need innovation, and if we need progress, we have to find the less costly solution or the less damaging solution or whatever. And so every area, and I totally agree with George that this flexibility is highly local, but it's making a lot of savings if we adopt correct solutions to it. And I think this is something that everybody has to take into consideration in an innovative way.
Okay, and there are also recommendations. I mean, you have been working, Nikos, on this implementation plan that George mentioned, and we did these regional events together. There is lots of recommendation. There are lots of goals, lots of recommendations, but someone has to move. Who has to move?
Let me just say that flexibility is, of course, to a large extent local, but it's also global. You need to have global flexibility to for instance, deal with problems like frequency. However, I would like to stress here that ETIP SNET is a platform that really coordinates these views from different stakeholders, from the large group of stakeholders, and that can provide views on flexibility that serve the different sectors. This is what has been done at a large extent in the documents that he have provided, and also identifying the needs and the research and innovation needs that, of course, many things have been solved, technical, but many more researches need to be done to make this possible throughout Europe.
It has been said before, we don't have the silver bullet, and maybe we shouldn't look for the silver bullet, maybe some bullets. Let me come to an end. We have to close it for maybe one last question to everybody. And Michele, you listened, and I saw you taking notes. In the subsequent events, we will dig a bit deeper. One of our assumptions is that energy communities, so groups of people doing it together on local level, maybe not the silver bullet, but a good idea. So we will dig into that in the next event. But I would like to hear an advice from everybody on the panel. And Michele, I know that you would like to have it as well. Whom should we bring together? We say we are the NSCG, national stakeholders, but we also agree that we need local, regional stakeholders, we need industry stakeholders. So please, one final advice from everybody, whom should we bring together, not only in these two subsequent events, but maybe in the entire discussion in the next few years. Take the opportunity, you are wise people. And George, you will have the last say. Who starts? Who needs to be at the table and why? Teresa is brave.
Maybe I start. We have to put at the table different people according to the different situations. So first of all, we have to have the guidance from the government. Then we have to look at cities and to understand the needs of cities according to their dimension. Of course, Paris is very different from one city. I recently visited in the interior of Portugal, Tondela, but they have the same willingness to decarbonize, but the needs are different. So we have to look at the resources. So we have to have at the table people that know how, the value of the resources, including waste, urban waste and agriculture waste, and to couple to use the waste to have green gas. We need to have the people from the municipalities, because maybe they are the first to be addressed, so that they understand the benefits of a kind of intrusive measures in their regions. I'm remembering about the problem of lithium in Portugal that was very badly addressed. So, and no one wants to explore, but it's a value for the region and it's a value for the decarbonization. So I would say, first of all, governments, academia, able to explain, mayors and communities.
While you're talking, I'm showing a picture that Venizelos has shared with me. I don't know if you see it, but it a bit describes also all these stakeholder groups. But maybe feel free to make other proposals. Venizelos, did you send me this picture because you wanted to point to me that these are the right people to talk?
No. Well, of course, that's who contributes in order to achieve this resilience in the grid that we want when things go more local, more distributed, more renewable. And there is solutions, there is hope. We can find resilient solutions to move forward, but we bring into the focus the end user. That's fundamental. We need them, and we need new technology solutions. I mean, e-mobility is coming strong in this process because it's bringing storage with it and it's bringing more efficient use into it. And operators are becoming a multiplicity of operators. It's not only grid, it's also energy community operators. It's also electric mobility operators. And so all these disciplines we all want them to be grid literate, energy literate, in order to make a system not like for like, but resilient enough to continue the quality of supply that we all want.
Nikos, something to add to the colleague from Cyprus?
Well, I like the slide of my colleague from Cyprus. I think it really expresses very well what are the flexibility sources, giving emphasis to the distributed resources, which is really the main fact. And then they are serving the needs of the system that's operated by the operators. And so this slide, I think it's very good. It really expresses what flexibility is all about.
Philip, I don't see geothermal on it. I don't see heat on it. How do we bring the heat people in it?
We will remain technology neutral, but what is clear is that no, with the recent adoption of energy efficient directive, each city with a population higher than 50,000 people will have to design a heat planning. Okay, so here I think more than Meyer, what will be key will be the energy planners inside the municipality, inside the cities, because when they will look at heating, they will have to look at electricity and mobility and so on. They will have to adopt to deal with sector coupling. No, so that is it will be implemented in the next years, and it's here where we see things happening. What is sure also is that when you speak about energy communities, it will not be only for electricity. It will be also for heating and cooling. And people who have seen that during the last winter, no, they have been much more sensitive to the heating price and to heating consumptions, also able to decrease their consumptions on strict measures. No, so we will also see that people also dealing more and more with their heating and cooling, as we were doing in the past with gas. We would switch from gas to heating and cooling.
How do we bring these people, Sabine? I mean, thanks for coming. You are a mayor. It's a very rare case that a mayor speaks in such a panel. How do we bring your colleagues, or whom should we bring from this local level into that discussion?
I think the local people will, they will bring their part, but you have to give them the opportunity. So we cannot bring everybody from the local area to such a panel. That's obviously not possible. But I think we talked about hubs, for example, where you say the people from the local areas have a place, or a bundle of people they can ask. And when you go to these people, they will see what the problems on the municipalities are. And I think these people are then the people who can bring the questions forward to a group like we've seen now today, and where all the players are in a panel or in a working group, because the problems of each municipality will differ very, very extremely, depending on the area they are located, depending on the size of the village or the city. So you have to find hubs where you can collect all the issues they have, and then transport them in a very structured way to a panel which is working on it.
Local energy hubs,
for example. But you have to see that they are neutral, that they are not sort of hubs which need which you need to ask because they are a higher authority, or which you have to think about, yes, they are paid in another way because then they want to have a different tariff or whatever. So they really have to be neutral, and they have to be someone I can go to, and there must be a technical expert, they have to be legal experts, they have to be also communication experts, so that you really have a possibility to discuss all the issues which come up.
George, will you come to Hindelang?
Oh, yes, please.
When they open their local energy hub. It's nice area, I can tell you.
I would very much like to see it in person, of course. If you're asking me who should participate, well, when we organize something, we look at who benefits of it. For instance, in case of flexibility, who uses the flexibility, and you have the right people on the slide, who can provide flexibility and monetize this and draw benefits from that perspective, and you have them, the potential people on the slide, and there were many other parties, and then who can facilitate all these transfers, both in terms of policy, regulation, local authorities, and so on. But I would mention something that was not mentioned here. Going back to research and innovation, we have many excellent projects that demonstrated that. Flexibility, energy communities, they have pilots that they have implemented, and you, Ludwig, you know them well, and Nikos, Venizelos, and so on. So please invite some good projects that had good local implementations, and when they share their what they did immediately brings up a visual image of how things could work in practice, and that in my experience capacitate the discussions and sparks ideas.
Yeah.
Bridge community.
Yeah. See you then for the continuation, Michele. I saw you writing a lot. I don't know what you wrote on your pieces of paper or on your tablet. Maybe
yes,
summarize it in some sentences, and let's invite people for the next event.
Yes, thank you very much, Ludwig. In fact, I tried to make some kind of schemes of what has come out during this first webinar, and I must say that I am happy this is the first of a series, because the more I dig into these aspects, the more I am convinced that this is really a huge problem. You have aspects that are to be dealt with through a top-down approach. We have spoken about strategies from the government. We have spoken about responsibilities also from the entire countries down to the urban aspects. And I think that one of the first aspects we need to understand is also the different levels of responsibilities. And I think that this is starting from the identification and the clustering of the level of responsibilities will be already a very important step. We have also seen that this is not only a top-down approach, but we have also seen that there is a need of a bottom-up view, and this has been very much the focus of the panel today. So we have individual, we have the level of the individual, we have the level of the local community, we have the level of a larger community with the industries, the regions, and so on. And all what we have learned is the fact that these two levels need to work together, but not only top down, also side from one side to the other, because we have also spoken about the importance of having the different silos working together, and this, by definition, is not an easy task, because if the silos are silos, it is difficult then to connect them with one another. We have also heard about the fact that at least for the short to medium term, technology is there. We have heard that there is the possibility of a wider observability, of the controllability of the system, and also of the interconnections with the Power-to-X solutions of the different parts of the system. But there is a keyword that I think has also come out of this session, is the absolute necessity of a higher level of literacy. And I think thinking, for example, now I have an electric vehicle, and with the electric vehicle, I had to have a stronger literacy in terms of the way I plan my not daily trip, but when I come to Brussels with my electric vehicle, I need to have a higher energy literacy, because it's not like for like Venizelos was saying, but it is something that is better but different. And I think that the evolution of the energy system is something that is better and different, which means that somehow you need to have not only a literacy, but at least a consciousness of the fact that you are part of a bigger system and that you can contribute to that. But to contribute to that, of course, there is the individual. There is the fact that you need somehow to tackle with somehow your data, and you need trust to the entire system, and you need to give a license to someone who will help you in achieving the bigger picture. And now we are speaking NSCG, but in one of the events, we will also speak with the people coming from the International Energy Agency, with special reference to one of the technology collaboration programs, that is the user TCP. I think this is one of the subjects that will give us very good ideas as well. For example, because they have a program, a task, which is called License to Automate. And I think this is very, very much in the focus of the discussion today. So I will. You're showing what will happen in the next days or in the next months. We have in less than a month the event number 2, where we will focus on energy communities and on their potential contribution to local and regional flexibility. We have a first draft of the webinar, but also studying and also leveraging on the discussion today, I think we will adapt also our program. And then we will have the opportunity of coming together in Rome for a hybrid meeting, which I hope will be very much in presence meeting. And you are already all invited in the premises of the GSE to take part in this event. So first of all, I think it is an interesting and important event we had today, but fortunately it's only the first part, because I did not understand. I don't, for the moment, have a complete picture of the problem. So I need other pieces of the puzzle before we can get the entire picture. Ludwig, thank you for moderating.
Thanks everybody for coming, and Michele, you will have to come to Bad Hindelang as well. I know Sabine will invite you, and you will be literate enough to cross the Alps with your electric vehicle. Thanks everybody. Have a nice afternoon. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you very much. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.